Whether or not you're a casual or avid gamer, it's likely you've heard of a rogue or roguelike game. There are countless hours of game time to be had in titles in the genre, but I find most of the time people don't know where rogue or roguelike games came from. One of my personal favorites is Risk of Rain 2. I always wondered where a game like this took inspiration from. So in this video we're going to take a little look back at the very beginning of the rogue genre, and the predecessor of Risk of Rain 2. The year is 1980. A game would come out like no other before. Rogue. It was a simple game written within the limitations of symbols we have on our keyboards. Visually, it was unimpressive and plain, especially when there were games like Pac-Man hitting arcades. But nonetheless, Rogue manages to stand out from the others with its unique gameplay. You literally play as the @ sign on your keyboard, moving through a sea of procedurally generated boxes filled with asterisks or dots to identify what a movable space was. Monsters were random and represented only by a single letter. If you saw a B, you'd fight a bat, or E for an emu, or even K for a man named Kestrel. This simple game of moving from one area to another, fighting different monsters, wasn't a unique concept though. Where Rogue differed from other games at the time was permanent death, meaning if you died one time, that's it. Back to the beginning, you're done, game over. Thankfully, Rogue had different items you would acquire at random with each playthrough. These would provide different stats to your @ sign of a character, which would allow the player to get creative with their playstyle. One playthrough you might be a tank, but then you die. You boot up the game again, and this time your items force you into a hit-and-run assassin. Rogue was a game. Being the first of its kind, Rogue's influence was apparent in the creation of new games. A game genre called roguelike was born because the games were like Rogue. Skip about 30 years into the future to a game called Risk of Rain. The homage to Rogue was so prevalent in this game, but at the same time it was very different. You no longer played as an @ sign moving around dots inside a box. Now you were a humanoid character called a survivor in a sci-fi-esque world on a side-scrolling platformer. And for all you youngsters out there, a side-scrolling platform is just an old Mario game. And if you don't know what that is, then I can't really help you. You could fight a big clay golem, or a floating eye with smaller eyes that shoot lasers at you, or fight a purple man who's eternally on fire. There was a lot of stuff you could fight in that game. Immediately off the start, you're immersed into this amazing soundtrack. This 2013 roguelike game hits you with some adrenaline-filled bangers and ominous beats to keep you engaged throughout your playthrough. Modern orchestral music seemed to be the big norm for video games at this time, but just listen to this. Mixed with high-intensity platforming and combat, you'll be at the edge of your seat trying your best to make it a little bit further than you did the last time. Clawing your way through each level, just trying to see if it was possible to beat the game, was more than enough to keep players on this game. Ultimately, players would be decimated by the difficulty scaling or lose themselves on the screen filled with monsters and projectiles. To add insult to injury, after you've gone as far as you can, and you've fallen just like the time before, the game's difficulty meter taunts you the further along you were before you died. Very easy, easy, medium, hard, very hard. Now these sound like regular difficulty levels, and that's because they are. Next we have insane and impossible. These still sound normal, but to the average player I'd expect they'd feel some discomfort after seeing impossible was the difficulty. The last set of difficulties is where things get a little bit sickening. It reads, I see you. Who sees me? Is this the person or thing that's trapped me in this hellish game? Then you get hit with, I'm coming for you. It was now apparent to me, the player, that there was a big bad at the end of the game, and he is now taunting me. If you somehow manage to push past that, the game straight up laughs at you. It reads, ha 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 ha. This game is sick, but in a good way. Six years later, March 28th, 2019, Risk of Rain 2 premiered. Just like with Rogue, Risk of Rain had changed. And now with the second title, more change had come to the new series. Risk of Rain 2 was a game changer to the roguelike genre. It showed that roguelikes could still be fun, and they could be done in different ways. The developer Hopo Games was brave enough to make a game, 3D, open world, and third-person shooter. Before, we were used to moving our @ around one space at a time. Later we moved into intense platforming and moving in real time versus the enemies. And now, it was like the player unlocked the full version of the game. There was no more moving side to side. You had full control over your character. Now you had to aim, which was something you previously never had to do. Before, what you saw on the screen was what was there. But now, you could move your screen a full 360 degrees and see what your character would be seeing. Hopo Games brought back the same cast and items from before to give longtime fans some comfort in the new game. Items could be obtained from acquiring gold from defeated enemies, or through defeating bosses placed before each level. The formula worked. Step 1. Get kick-ass music. Step 2. Add unique items into the game. Step 3. Make engaging combat for the players. And Step 4. Make the player addicted to the game.
It sucks playing the shit! And I'm fucking addicted! So I can't quit!
I have personally put over 120 hours into this series, and after that, I can say that every playthrough I did was different. Even if I had played the same survivor every single time, I would have had a different playthrough. Every item would have been different. I would always find myself with a different item build that enabled me to play a different way than I had before. Crawling through each procedurally generated level, you get that sense of familiarity with each biome type. You get used to the enemy types in each environment, but you're never prepared when you summon the boss between levels. Rogue never really had a story unless you gave it one. The Risk of Rain series, on the other hand, also doesn't have a story, but doesn't need it. That being said, you can still beat the game and appreciate the tidbits of background info the developers give us. This isn't really a review of Risk of Rain as a series, more like a recap or a shitty infomercial. Do I think you should play them? Yes, play the games, they're good. Are they perfect? No. I just happen to really enjoy booting up a game and having no idea how I'm gonna break the game this time. Roguelikes aren't meant to be played once. The developers write the stuff into the game, and it's our job to find different ways to play.